Welcome to the channel. Today we're sharing a cheating story you won't believe. If you enjoy it, please like and subscribe. Let's get started. Figuring out where to begin this story was tough, but let's start with a Friday evening in April. I'll add some context as we go, but this seems like the right place to begin. It was just after 4:30 p.m. on a sunny Friday, and I had wrapped up my work week. April weather in Arizona can be unpredictable, but that day was beautiful clear skies, about 72 degrees, and warm sunshine. I was feeling great with the weekend ahead. Then it hit me. I had no plans, no dates, and no idea what to do with myself. I had been divorced for 3 years, 29 years old at this point in the story, and not dating anyone. I had tried the online route with no luck, just a waste of money. Most of my friends are married, and a couple of the blind dates they set me up on were flops. My ex is in a solid relationship with a woman, and they may be my closest female friends. Creeping into my head is the thought, what's wrong with me? I pulled up to my house and felt momentarily better looking at the structure. Through my boss, I had gotten a great deal on the house. It was definitely a fixer-upper, and I had spent a lot of time trying to get it back in shape. I had made progress. The 1960s Sarah Ranch style had been a reclamation project, and I had invested a lot of time and money to get it to the point it was at now. My industry connections in the construction business had helped. I got home, grabbed my running stuff, and went to change. I looked at myself in the mirror, 6 feet, a fairly solid 185 pounds, not washboard abs, but certainly some visible abdominal muscles. According to my ex, I was not bad looking. So, what was wrong with me, and how is it that I have not had a meaningful date in many months? I was starting to get depressed, so I took off on my run. I always feel better after a workout and was enjoying a beer in the late afternoon sunshine on my back deck when my cell buzzed. It was my ex-brother-in-law, Luke. Hey Ryan, what's shaking? Luke is in finance, and the little money I have, he takes care of. He is really good. His wife, Chloe, is beautiful, fun to talk to, and keeps his enormous ego in check. What do you got going tomorrow? Knowing I had nothing but reluctant to admit it, I implied I was busy but had some flexibility in my schedule. Rick, tell me the old man has you working on Friday. A little background: at this point I work at Pinecrest Timber. Tom's father, Henry Pearson, is the owner and my boss. My ex, Emily, is the accountant and Tom's sister and Daniel's daughter. Luke never went into the lumber business, got an MBA, and now he has his own investment business, Pearson Associates. Growing up, my mom, my sister, and I weren't exactly poor, but we flirted with that socioeconomic status. In high school, anything beyond the basics I had to pay for myself. After football season my junior year, I went to the counseling center and found a lead for a job at a company within bicycle distance of my mom's place. I knew if I ever were to get a car, no one was going to help me pay for it. That Monday at 4 p.m. was the first time I entered the front door at Pinecrest Timber. It was an open office with windows to the warehouse at the back and 3 private offices on the left-hand side. I checked my note card and asked for Mr. Carson. 10 minutes later, an older short guy with long hair falling in his face walked up. Mac. Hi. He offered a large rough hand with part of his pointer finger missing. We walked to one of the offices with files, magazines, catalogs, and blocks of wood everywhere. He sat behind his desk, put his feet up, and asked me what I knew about the lumber business. Not very much, I replied. Probably not the best answer if I wanted the job. Then why are you wasting my time? I was nervous and intimidated and didn't know how to answer. He just stared at me. Finally, I said, Mr. Carson, I need a job, and I promise you I will work hard. He kept staring for a good 30 seconds, not saying a word. I was thinking of what other jobs were on the board at the counseling center when all of a sudden he says, be here tomorrow at 3:30 and be prepared to work. I was shocked, stood up, shook his hand, and left. I noticed a tall, balding man poke his head out of the last office and look at me. Little was I to know how the path of my life had just changed. So back to that Friday in April, sitting on my deck talking to Luke. No, I'm not working this weekend, just a lot of errands to try to get done. Oh, tomorrow is Friday, and there is an event at the fairgrounds and I have to be there. Chloe has a couple of friends coming, and I need you to be there with me. I actually wouldn't mind going, but I had to act like I didn't. But before I could even start any protestation, Luke said, pick you up at 11. Then I heard the dial tone. I guess I'm going to the spring fair. I met Luke Pearson the same day that I met my ex-wife. By the end of my junior year, I had been working at Pinecrest Timber 5 days a week, 3:30 to 6, and occasionally on Fridays if they needed it. I had bought a very used Toyota Corolla with lots of miles, but it ran well and got good gas mileage. I made just about enough to pay insurance, get some gas, and I was left with about 20 extra per week to help my mom. I was excited to start working full-time, 7 to 3:30 every day, now that school was out for the summer. On the Tuesday after Memorial Day, I showed up bright and early to start my first full day of work. The shop lead was a wiry man named Rick Brown. It was Rick who, I guess you would call, my supervisor during my after-school working days. Rick knew all the machines in the shop, watched over inventory, and supervised deliveries and receipt of materials in the shop. He basically ran the back-end operation. He taught me a lot, and this summer I was going to learn more about how the milling, veneer, and other machines worked. My job was basically running the machine's maintenance. What I knew I learned from Rick. That Tuesday, I was informed I got a 15-minute break at 10 a.m., 30 minutes for lunch at noon, and then off at 3:30. Rick sent me to the break room at 10, a place I'd never been before. It was on the far side of the office near the women's bathroom. As I entered the office, I first saw this preppy little punk smirking at me. I guess it was because of the way I was dressed. "Hi, Rick, you're gonna cause an energy crisis." I was wearing an old pair of overalls Rick had given me, and it still had the oval tag with his name sewed onto the bib. It was smeared with oil from my work on the equipment. That wasn't the worst of it. Immediately, I heard a giggle, and there was this girl a bit younger, good-looking, giggling behind her hands at me. Who were these people? I had never seen them before at Premium. Just then, the owner, the tall man that looked at me on the day of my interview, yelled at them to knock it off. I quickly got to the break room, away from these two smug kids. As I was sitting, embarrassed and drinking a cup of coffee, the owner, the tall man, came into the break room. In all the months I'd worked there, I had never spoken to him. "Rick, mind them, they're just my spoiled children. They are working here this summer, but to be honest, I'm not sure what Luke is being paid for. We've never formally met. I'm Henry Pearson." He offered his hand. I mumbled Ryan Thompson as we shook. "Good to meet you, Ryan. I am hearing good things about you from Rick. Let's talk again later this summer. In the meantime, ignore those two jackasses." And that was my first encounter with Luke and Emily Pearson. I heard the horn of Tom's black BMW that Friday morning, only 20 minutes late. "Where's Chloe?" I glanced at Tom's dark sunglasses, slicked back black hair, tan face, still the preppy I met 9 years ago. "She met Kate and Diana for coffee downtown. We're meeting them at the fair." Kate and Diana. I wonder if this was a setup. We parked and walked a few blocks to the fairgrounds. I got to drop this by the fair office. Pearson Associates is a co-sponsor of the event, and Luke was delivering his company brochures. The girls are over by the booths. As we walked up, I saw the gorgeous blonde and smiling Chloe, who gave Luke a kiss and introduced me to Kate and Diana. Kate had long, dark, straight hair and was very curvy but had a bit of a hard look. She was showing a little cleavage, and I had to keep my eyes up when we shook hands. Diana was different, dark curly hair, athletic build, and a ready smile. She stared into my eyes. "Nice to meet you, Ryan. I've heard about you." I snuck a glance at Chloe, and all I saw was a sly smile. My weekend was definitely getting better. As a group of 5, we wandered the fair, and I found myself often strolling alongside Diana. She had a nice way of looking me right in the eye when we talked. She had a great laugh, and I found myself being outgoing and witty. Every so often, I would glance over at Luke and catch him smiling at me. It was turning out to be a great day. We spent several hours checking out all the exhibits, occasionally running into acquaintances, and having a good time. Luke knew a lot of people, and this was networking for his business. We decided to go to Mallory's and grab a beer and try to get an outside table. Kate decided to head home something about a headache, and Luke said we would make sure that Diana had a ride. We found a great outdoor table, and the sun felt wonderful. Luke told lots of funny stories about work, marriage, and his family. I tried to remember the last time I had such a good time. Diana was fun to talk to, interesting, and asked me questions about myself. After Luke ordered a third round, I made the offhand comment, "For sure I need to run tomorrow." Diana asked where I ran, and before I knew it, we had a running date for Sunday at 9 a.m. Eventually, we left. I was having such a great time with Diana, talking, laughing, learning about her life. It was very nice. We just seemed to click. I was just hoping there wasn't some version of a significant other in her life. We dropped her off at her condo, and I told her I would pick her up at 9 for the run on the lakeshore path. As soon as we were heading home, I got the look from the front seat. "What?" I said as Luke gave me the smirking grin. "'Kay, so she's cool. What do you want from me? Running tomorrow with her?" "Well, that's fast," Luke grinned. "Ever since Emily and I divorced, Tom's been trying to find me a new woman. I actually think he feels a little responsibility about my failed marriage with his sister. He may have known about her orientation beforehand, but he never said so. I worked at Pinecrest Timber all my senior year after school. Once football was done, I even worked Fridays in the fall. I was learning from Rick all about the machinery from the inside out. During busy weeks, I was asked to run equipment on Fridays, and I ran everything but the veneer press and learned the capabilities of all the machines. Emily came in on Fridays and helped with the books. She went to a private high school on the other side of town, so this was the only time I got to see her. She was really cool, fun to talk to, and not stuck up like other rich kids. About halfway through our senior year, we started dating. What started out as friendship became dating, and before we graduated, we had begun having sex. Emily had a tight body with a beautiful bum and small but perky breasts. I loved making love to her, and in retrospect, I now realized that she was not into it nearly as much as I was. But I was blinded by my own lust, and during those moments, I did not notice. We both graduated and both worked at Premium that summer. I wasn't sure what I was going to do in the fall, but Emily was going to Colorado State University. I was concerned about being apart, missing her, other guys. Little did I know then, other guys were never going to be a problem, just the distance. When I would bring any of this up to her, all she would say is, "Rick, worry, you're the only man for me." She was honest, she just didn't mention other women in the equation. Late that summer, my boss, Sophia's dad, Henry Pearson, approached me and asked about my plans for the future. I really didn't know what was going to happen. I had an application for Nashville Community College on my dresser, but even as inexpensive as community college was, I did not have the money for it. Turns out, Mr. Carson had cancer. He was only coming in a few days a week, and that was not going to last for long. "Ryan, you know our shop? You're good with our customers, and I need some youth in this office. I was thinking of having you work with Rick when needed in the shop, but mostly I want you in the office learning the business side of Pinecrest Timber." I was shocked. "I'm going to start you at $4,500 a month, and when times are good, there are year-end bonuses." I immediately accepted, and I couldn't help but wonder if my relationship with his daughter helped me get this position. On Monday, I started in the office. I showed up in my shop clothes. Henry immediately sent me home to change. I began learning the business. I was impressed with Daniel's knowledge, his easygoing but confident way with customers. I had a good knowledge of products and what our machining could do. What I didn't know was pricing, customer knowledge, and the accounting side of the business. Henry was helpful and patient with me. After initial nervousness around him, I began to become much more comfortable with him. I stayed in touch with Emily while she was at college, and I felt like our relationship was staying strong through the fall. I picked Diana up Sunday morning at 9 for our run. She was in maroon tights and a Lululemon tight-fitting top. She looked awesome, a very nice athletic body topped by those black curls, dark eyes, and great smile. We chatted comfortably as we drove to the trailhead. "I normally do the 5-mile loop. You okay with that?" "Sure," she said. We stretched and took off. Whenever you are running with someone else for the first time, you kind of have to find their rhythm, slightly speeding up or slowing down at first. We didn't have to, we were in sync immediately. We chatted as we went, and I found out she was a dental hygienist. She was from the Bay Area. Her dad had passed away. He had worked for the railroad, and her mother worked in a hair salon owned by her mother's sister. Her mom was of Italian heritage. Anna Maria was her mother's maiden name. That's where she got the curly dark hair. Talking the whole way, we made the 5-mile loop and were back at the car by 10:30. It was so pleasant, I could have run another 5 with her. I suggested coffee, and we went to a nearby cafe. I had learned from Luke and Chloe on the way home last night there were no known boyfriends or significant others. I did a mental checklist: 1, no boyfriend; 2, fun to be with, and she seems to like me; 3, great looking. I began to think my bad luck may have changed. Unfortunately, I knew I still had a lot to do at home. The tile on the fireplace was half done, and the backer board for the shower was sitting in the garage. "Diana, I'm having a great time with you, but I have to get going. I would like to see you next weekend. Are you available?" "Yes, I think so. How about we do something Friday?" We exchanged phone numbers and then headed home. I considered a kiss or a hug or something. I just felt so close to her but decided I'm going to do this right and play it slow. I was pretty happy as I got home and got to work. As the week started, I debated the proper time to firm up the coming weekend. I texted her Monday after work and asked if she wanted to hike to Cedar Falls during the day and grab some dinner after. She texted back enthusiastically and added heart emojis her first official date. Tuesday was a busy day at Pinecrest Timber. Henry was in Portland working with a big potential client. One problem after another surfaced, and I was the one that had to fix everything: a late shipment, an unhappy customer, and one of the custom milling machines went down while Rick was working on the veneer machine. I didn't get home until after 7. I was beat. While I was defrosting a frozen pizza, my phone buzzed, indicating a text. What now? I thought. To my utter delight, it was a checking-in message from Diana. My mood immediately changed, and we ended up texting back and forth for over an hour. This all just felt so easy and natural. I know it has been less than a week, but wow, I was excited about a woman for the first time in a long, long time. Friday night, I texted her, and we had another nice back-and-forth session. Friday night, she initiated it, and we discussed some of the details of our Friday plan. That night, I called Luke and caught him while he and Chloe were out to dinner, and he said he'd call back. They called back on their way home. Hey, what's shaking, Romeo? I heard Chloe giggle. Just checking in with you guys. How was dinner? I was trying to get the conversation shifted towards Diana, but I didn't want to sound eager in front of Chloe. Oh, you don't care about our dinner, but we do know you're seeing Diana this weekend. Your run date must have gone well. I told them running was good and that she seemed like a nice girl. You get her in the sack yet? Luke asked. Ricked be and a holy. Not everyone thinks like you, Chloe laughingly said. We talked for a bit more, joking and having a good time, and it was time to get off. Man, I have not heard you this excited about a woman since my sister. I explained I liked her so far. As we were hanging up, I heard Chloe say, just be careful, Ryan. Itchem. I wonder what she meant by that. Friday after work, I had just finished my run, sitting on the back deck and having a beer. What a difference a week made. Last week at this point, I was feeling down about myself. Today, I'm feeling very good. About 8. I sent Diana a text checking a few details about our date tomorrow and just to see what she was up to. I checked my phone at 9:30. No reply. That was a little unusual. Oh well, I'll see her tomorrow. I picked her up at 1 p.m. and we headed east into the mountains toward the trailhead. Something seemed a bit off. She was still nice, relatively affectionate, but without the usual energy. When I asked how she was doing, she said, just a little tired. It's been a long week. Before I could learn more about her long week, she started asking about the hike. No more explanation on the long week. We enjoyed the hike, and when the trail was wide enough, we walked side by side, and she held my hand. Just this small intimacy felt so good after all this time without. The plan was to drop her at home, so she could change and get cleaned up and swing back at 7 for dinner at Mario's downtown. She looked great in tight jeans and a form-fitting top. She gave me a big hug and kiss when I got there. I almost thought if I pushed it, we could be in her bed fairly quickly, but I remembered I was going to play this one differently. The restaurant was cozy, with wonderful food and delicious wines. We split a bottle of wine and each had a brandy as we enjoyed dessert. I knew I should sober up a little before heading home, so I suggested we walk the square. This is an area downtown closed to vehicles with cafes, retail shops, bars, and other restaurants. The night was pleasant, and Diana snuggled up to me as we walked. I think we were both feeling good, a little tipsy, but happy. A comfortable, easy conversation as we strolled past couples and groups of people. As we were heading back, I noticed a group of young men ahead, and as we angled past them, all of a sudden, one of them shouts, "Liv!" I was immediately on guard, but Diana moved toward them, smiling and accepted hugs from 3 of these guys. Hey girl, what's happening? What you doing down here? Meanwhile, I'm standing there, ignored as they all connect. After probably a minute, though it felt like a lot longer, Diana turns to me, flush-faced, and says, Ryan, these are my friends Henry, JT, and Ethan. I automatically reach my hand out to shake. The 3 look at each other, smile, and elaborately attempt to shake my hand with all types of gyrations. They chatted for 10 minutes about things I didn't follow. I gathered it was about music and a club that I had heard of called Pulse. There was an overwhelming familiarity among Diana and these guys. I observed an intimacy, especially with the one named Ethan, that was curious to the point of unsettling. I felt all the warmth and goodwill of the evening draining away. By my observation, she seemed to be loving the attention and the company of this group. Finally, with hugs and light kisses, they parted. "Nice to meet you," I said. Ethan just nodded, and they turned and went the other way. About 15 seconds later, I heard them hoot with laughter. Diana snuggled back up with me, but my relaxed mood of before was gone. Were these the kind of friends she had? Nothing wrong with them, but clearly not my scene. She talked about them a bit, and I gathered that this Pulse was a dance club in the old section of town that was once an old warehouse. She told me how fun it was and that we should go. I chuckled and said I was not a great dancer. No one cares, it's just a place to have fun. We drove home, and I tried to be upbeat, but something about that whole scene held me back from being as affectionate as I felt earlier in the evening. When we got to her place, I walked her to the lobby and gave her a hug goodbye. "Do you want to come up for coffee?" Normally, this is a no-brainer, but a combination of wanting to do the right thing and also sheltering myself from getting hurt stopped me. "Thanks, but I'm okay. I'll see you later." I gave her a quick hug and a kiss on the cheek, and I left. Throughout Sophia's freshman and sophomore years at Colorado State, we stayed close. In retrospect, it was a warm friendship with sex. We saw each other on all her holidays. I looked forward to her visits so much, and she did too, almost as much as I did. When I would ask her about school, she did not have a lot to say. Sometimes I would get jealous and quiz her about all the guys at school. Finally, once I may have gotten a little possessive about it, and she grabbed my shirt and, with the most serious look I had ever seen from her, she said, "I told you there are no other guys. Leave it alone," and she walked out of the restaurant. For the most part, we got along great. I was seeing this ideal situation being with Emily and she and I running Pinecrest Timber. It was too good to be true, but it looked like it could happen. I was learning so much from Sophia's dad, Henry. He and I had a good, comfortable relationship. I think he was also happy with my and Sophia's relationship. I guess he saw me as a bit of an opposite of Luke. Luke was flashy, arrogant, and funny. He was at USC, barely hanging on while partying through his college life. I think he had a come to Jesus discussion and buckled down and eventually graduated. On the other hand, I was not flashy. I made up the lack of flash with hard work and knowledge of the wood products industry. Henry knew Luke was never going to make a career at Pinecrest Timber. I, on the other hand, was looking like a long-term employee and in a serious relationship with his daughter. Henry was definitely on my side in this whole thing. Hey Race, what happened? I proposed to Emily before her junior year, and she said she had to think about it. Halfway through that year, Emily asked for some space. I was heartbroken. I threw myself into work. We still talked, and our friendship was strong, but Emily was trying to find herself. We didn't see much of each other through that junior year, mails and some phone calls, and occasionally I saw her when she came home. We worked together all that summer, but I gave her the space she asked for. Throughout her senior year, our communication fell off. I had even gone on a few dates, nothing very serious. All of a sudden, she was calling and emailing like I need my space times. That summer, she came back and we got back together, and she asked me if my proposal was still an option. I was shocked. Happily, I said it was. We were married that Henritmas. I was extremely happy. Henry was very happy, and as I look back on it, I would put Emily at medium happy. But at that moment, I was blinded by my dream of the girl, the career, and the father I never had. Life for me was wonderful for a while. Emily and I worked together at Pinecrest Timber. Business was good. I was learning a lot. My relationship with Henry was really good and continued to get better. Surprisingly, so did my relationship with my new brother-in-law, Luke. I learned that even though he was a self-absorbed, arrogant little jerk at times, he was fiercely loyal, and for whatever reason, he liked me. The first 3 years I thought were great, but cracks started forming in the foundation, and the first big crack was our sex life. From once or twice a week throughout our first 3 years, by the beginning of year 3, it was once or twice a month. In retrospect, I could tell she was just not into it. Then Nina moves here. She was a friend of Sophia's from Colorado. Her name is Minley Pham. She went by Nina. Through Daniel's contacts, I had bought the house in Still Inkheap, $150,000. It needed a ton of work, and the bank would not even loan against it. I bought it on contract from Daniel's old partner, and actually the payment was made through premium and deducted out of my check. Confusing, but Luke assured me this was the best way to do this transaction. I got it habitable and Emily never complained. There was a small guest cottage at the back with plumbing and electrical. Nina moved in. She was an artist, and the cottage became her studio. Emily seemed to be spending more time in the cottage than at the house. Nina was always sweet to me, and there was no tension. After 6 months, one day, tearfully, Emily came to me and said she was in love with Nina. I thought she was joking, but she wasn't. There was no swearing, no violence, no arguments. I saw black, and I cried. Cried for the first time in almost 20 years. The loss was intense and so sad. I realized I had tied my relationship with Emily to my relationship with her family and my job. My whole life was going to change. For 3 days I sat at home and did nothing. The darkest of thoughts took up residence in my brain. I was at the point of very seriously ending my life, and then Luke showed up. He talked, then we talked, and then he listened. He made a phone call, and within 30 minutes, Henry was there. Henry assured me that no matter what happened, I had a home at premium. Luke told his dad that I needed a week off. Henry agreed. Luke took me on a road trip where we talked, drank, I cried a little, and I thought. On the way back, I began to realize a few things. I was terribly hurt, but I had a job I loved, I had a boss and ex-mother-in-law I truly liked and respected, and finally I had a good and loyal friend in Luke. Even Emily and I found a somewhat comfortable friendship. The divorce was easy. She didn't want anything, and I kept my house. Most surprising was how nice and supportive Nina was. There were some difficult times, but I had a good support system of people that seemed to genuinely care. I did promise myself before I ever got close to a woman again, I was going to protect myself first. On the way home from dropping Diana off, I tried to come to terms with my thoughts. Nothing really happened with meeting those guys. I felt a little disrespected by them and a touch disrespected by Diana. On the other hand, this was just our second date. She had a right to have friends, but there was something about that meeting that told me there was a level of closeness with those guys. This did not fit with the mental image I had of Diana. Maybe I should back off a little. Next day was Sunday, and I had to finish the fireplace and repair some dry rot. After breakfast, I plugged into podcasts and lost myself in the work. For me, the ability to repair and fix this house into the version of it I wanted was fulfilling. For me to own my own home and have it be as nice as I know it will be was particularly satisfying. It was mid-afternoon before I checked my phone. 2 texts. One from Luke checking in, and one from Diana. Randy and I are enjoying the weather and having coffee. Thanks for last night, Chim. I had to process this. Was I being too sensitive? Or should I trust my instincts? I need to think a little more. Later that afternoon, I sent back a non-committal text saying, have a good time, and that was it. Monday evening, I got another text from her saying, how was your day? I waited a few hours and said, good. Yours? I got a long text talking about work and a funny story about a dental patient. I didn't reply. Tuesday night, nothing, and I was a bit relieved. Friday night, she called. I was polite but not terribly enthusiastic. Finally, she asked me what was wrong. I said nothing, and then she asked if I was upset with her. I said no, I just have been busy. She invited me over for dinner Friday night. I accepted. Maybe I was being too petty to get upset over something like this. I vowed to put it behind me and see what happened. Dinner on Friday was nice. She's a good cook, and her condo was nice and well decorated. I began to feel comfortable again and was feeling optimistic. After dinner, we ended up in her bed, and making love to her was fun, and I think she had a good first experience too. We made love again that night and showered together in the morning with more action. Diana has a nice athletic body with a beautiful bum and nice-sized breasts. We spent Sunday together, and the intimacy of sex enhanced the progress of our relationship. We went for a run and, this time, showered back at my place. I showed her around my reclamation project, and she seemed interested in all the work I was doing. I showed her the old redwood hot tub I had picked up from a project we provided material for, and showed her where I was going to put it in the back. Diana was impressed with my carpentry skills, and she seemed to like my house. For the next few weeks, we saw each other 2 to 3 times weekly and spoke or texted daily. In a weak moment, I agreed to go to Pulse with her on Friday night. I can dance a little and don't mind it, but I had a feeling this was not my scene. Diana was so excited I could not help but get caught up in her enthusiasm. Pulse was the hip new club in the warehouse area of City Center. I had heard of it but had never been there. I told myself in strong relationships you need to make sacrifices every so often. I guess this was going to be one of them. We got there a little before 9. Diana seemed to know a lot of people, their employees and other customers. The place was dark with strobe lights going and a couple of DJs on elevated platforms. The dance floor was a mass of bodies all moving to the music, and it was hot inside. We found a spot, and Kate and some guy came over amidst hugs and laughter. It was difficult to talk with all the noise. Diana grabbed my hand, and we hit the dance floor. She was good, and I was way out of my league. Pretty soon, we were in the midst of the throng. After a bit, I wasn't sure if it was me or others dancing with Diana. I watched her and could tell she was having a great time. A while later, I shouted to her, "I'm going to get a beer." She just nodded and smiled. I waited for a moment to see if she was coming with me, but she was caught up in the dance. I stood at the table and occasionally saw flashes of Diana. So far, I had not recognized any of the group we had run into downtown those weeks ago. Diana came back and had a drink, but I could tell she wanted to keep dancing, so we went back. I was actually having a pretty good time until I recognized a couple of the guys we had met downtown, and specifically Ethan. Ethan was a great dancer, and he maneuvered so he was really dancing with Diana. I tried to move in and got an elbow. It may have been inadvertent, but I doubt it. This went on for a bit, and finally, I shouted in her ear, "I'm getting a drink. Do you want one?" She just nodded and kept dancing. I made my way to the bar and back to our table. I checked my watch, and it was a little after 11. I definitely wanted to get out of there, and I kept waiting for Diana to come back and get her drink. Finally, she came back, laughing and smiling with Ethan on her heels. She gave me a sweaty kiss on the cheek and grabbed her drink. She took a sip, and then Ethan grabbed it and chugged the rest. Diana just laughed. "Come on, let's dance." She grabbed my hand. "No thanks. I think I'm done," I said. "Just one more?" she asked, and then Ethan stepped in. "Come on, girl, I'll dance with you," and they took off. I was pissed, but it got worse. While I was standing and watching, they did all but screw on the dance floor. His hands were all over her, and she looked like she was enjoying it. I was now far beyond pissed. I checked my watch, and it was now after midnight. I was done. I was going to give her until 12:30, then I was leaving. I think it was 12:28 when she came back, and I grabbed her, and we headed toward the door. I was mad. I was trying to play it cool. I was not going to yell and scream. All the way back to her place, she went on about how good a time she had, how great the music was, and how much she liked dancing. The fact that I barely said 2 words did not seem to register with her. By the time we got to her apartment, she realized where we were. "I thought we were staying at your place tonight." "I'm beat," I said. "How about a different night?" I said with a forced smile. "Okay," she said and looked at me. I smiled, gave her a kiss, and took off without question. Not the way our dates had ended over the past few weeks. The next day, we had no correspondence. I was wrestling with my feelings. I really did like and care for her, but that scene and her enjoyment of it bothered me. And this errand, they looked like more than friends. I was busy both Friday and Sunday, mostly trying to work the redwood hot tub into a spot on the deck. Sunday night, I saw I had received a text from her, "What's up?" I didn't reply. Monday night, I got another text from her, "Hey you, I miss talking to you. Call me?" I figured I had to answer this one. I texted back, "Sorry, a lot going on. Let's connect tomorrow." "Okay," she said. Tuesday night, I was still struggling with the situation, and I never replied. Friday, I got home from work about 6, and in front of my house was her black Volkswagen. Oh, time to face the music, I guess. I found her sitting on my back deck. "What's the deal? Are you dumping me?" She looked a little angry. "Look, Diana, I don't know what's going on. I'm struggling with some things right now." "What?" she asked, and then I went into it. I started with my marriage to Emily, and that hurt, and then admitted the jealousy over her friendship with Ethan and my feelings of disrespect at the nightclub. I laid the whole thing out for her. Why not? I may never see her again. She sat there, staring at me, and then the tears started rolling down her cheeks. "I am so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. If it means keeping you, I never have to go to that place again. I want you, and I miss you, and I think I may be falling in love with you." I was in shock. I thought this was the end for us, but we just took a left turn, and we're going in a different direction. "Love?" She pledged again that she does not need to hang out with that crowd or go to the dance clubs. I asked her if she was sure, and she said, "Of course. If I had known that bothered you, I never would have asked you to go." We celebrated that night in my bed. The next few months went great. We did lots of stuff and went on vacation for a week in Hawaii. My first time there, and we loved it. We hung out with my friends and a few of hers, but never Ethan and that crowd. I never brought his name up. We had been dating now for about 8 months, and the holidays were coming up. She was at my place almost every night, and we started discussing living together. We spent the holidays with my family and the Pearsons. She got along great with everyone, except Nina. For some reason, there was some distance there. After the first of the year, business ramped up. We were selling into Northern California and the Puget Sound, and with the building boom, our products were in high demand. Henry asked if he and I could get together on Friday night. Sure, I said. What's up? Well, talk Friday was all he said. Friday was busy, and before I knew it, it was after 5. We met in Daniel's office. I found myself a bit nervous by the formality of this meeting. Henry explained that he was going to be 63 this year, and he was doing some longer-term planning. Instead of a bonus this year, I'm giving you 9 of Pinecrest timber. I was shocked. This was not what I was expecting. We have opened up NorCal and Western Washington, and that has been successful, as you know. But we are now getting a lot of demand in Colorado and some of the resort areas throughout the Rocky Mountains. I want you to open up those markets. It's going to mean some travel, probably a week a month. Are you up for it? Absolutely. I had seen so little of the country. Getting to travel to these areas was exciting, and being a part owner, that was very exciting. I was so happy. He went on to tell me that he owned now 51, Luke and Emily each owned 20, and I had the remaining 9. Emily was the CFO, but Luke managed the big-picture financial part of the business. I asked Henry if Emily and Luke were okay with me being a part owner. It was their idea, he replied. One other thing on your plate: Rick is going to retire at the end of the year. Nina's brother, Lucas Tran, is going to start working in the shop with Rick. I want you to keep your eye on him too. Will do, I said. I could not wait to tell Diana I was now an owner. I was going to start traveling. I was on cloud 9. She was happy about the ownership part, but significantly less enthused about my travel. How much will you be gone? She asked. I explained it would normally be a few days once a month. That seemed to make her relax a little. I jumped right into it and was in Salt Lake City within 2 weeks. I think my straightforward knowledge of the products and the process helped, and we immediately started getting orders, and I had barely scratched the surface. When I got my direct deposit for April, I saw I had an extra $1,500 gross in my account. I checked with Emily and she said, "That's your commission. We pay 3 of gross commission. Didn't he tell you that?" I did a little calculation and estimated I could easily sell $500,000 this first year. That was an extra $17,000 per year on top of my regular salary. I was going to be close to 6 figures this year. We planned another Hawaii trip for September, and I was starting to think about proposing to Diana. After the earlier problems, everything was going really well. I was extremely happy at work, and with the extra income of my commissions, I was able to accelerate my work on the house. The house was on a nice-sized lot, all one level, with the guest cottage in the back. It had 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, an open kitchen area, a study, and a family room attached to the kitchen. The cottage was a single room with a bathroom and a small kitchenette. I spent a lot of time in the garden. The garden was my oasis, and now with the redwood hot tub, it was spa-like in the back. Diana had dropped her apartment in May and had moved in formally. It was wonderful having her here, and for the most part, all was good. There was some tension when I traveled, but I thought we would get used to it. In September, I asked Luke out for dinner. I had something serious to discuss with him. We met at a bar near his office at 6 p.m. The weather was warm and we sat outside. "So what is up, bro?" "I've decided I'm going to propose to Diana, and I would like you to be the best man." He just stared at me for perhaps a full minute. "Married again? You remember what happened last time? This is different." "I'm different. I was just a kid then. Neither Emily nor I knew what we were doing then. This is now. I love her, and I don't want to be alone." "You sure about her?" "I recall a few bumps not that long ago," he said. We talked about it more, and I did get a few nervous thoughts based on what he said. It was as if he was trying to talk me out of it. I respected Tom's opinion, but he didn't know Diana like I did. "I want you to be my best man." I told him I was going to propose when we were in Kauai. We celebrated with tequila shots and ended up having a great night. 2 weeks later, I was headed back out to Salt Lake City. I needed some samples to show the customers, so that Friday I went out to the shop. Rick was not around. I grabbed my stuff and went to the saw. "What you need, boss?" It was Lucas Tran. "I got it, John, thanks though." He quickly came over, grabbed my samples, cut them up, boxed them, and gave them back to me. You need anything else? I take care of. Pretty impressive young man. Thanks, John. I appreciate it. Boss, you need any more help around here? My cousin is a good worker. Good to know, John. And you can call me Ryan. Okay, boss. On my last trip to Colorado, I had cold called on a place called Longfellow's. This time, I had a set appointment for Monday at 11 with Ethan Langley. I met him at their office outside Salt Lake City. He was a guy a bit younger with a light beard and hair in a ponytail. We hit it off and our meeting stretched into lunch. Not only did they look like they were going to be a good customer, but I also liked Junior. As we were parting, he told me he was doing some mill tours on the West Coast in November and wanted to come see our operation. These are normally great relationship-building opportunities. I told him I knew I had something in Montana 1 week in November, but I would get back to him. The trip to Kauai was unbelievable. We were at a nicer resort. The commissions helped with that cost. We hung out by the pool and on the beach. We explored the island, went on hikes, snorkeled, kayaked, active but relaxed all at the same time. We had a lot of sex. We found a secluded beach, and Diana went topless. She looked like a Playboy bunny. I was so turned on we nearly had sex on the beach, but there were a few people around. We more than made up for it when we got back to the hotel. On the second to last night, we were sitting on our balcony watching the sunset, and I gave her the engagement ring and asked her to marry me. She cried, hugged me, and we ended up back in bed. As we were laying there, I asked her if she was happy, and she said she was. If you could change anything in our lives, what would it be? I asked. She said, nothing. We were quiet for a minute, and then she said, I guess if there is anything, I wish you didn't travel so much. I told her it should slow down and that it was important for our financial future, and maybe there may be times she could go with me. Okay, she said quietly. I brushed off the comment quickly without a second thought. Maybe too quickly. Our lives kept going, but now with wedding plans happening also. We decided to do it around Valentine's Day. Diana did most of the planning. I was supportive. At work, business continued strong. Our edition of the Rocky Mountain Market increased demand, and we did end up hiring John's cousin, Eric and Gwyn, and another of their friends, Leo. Knowing Rick was leaving, I tried to spend some time with John. I saw that he was smart, hardworking, and dedicated. One night, he invited me to get a beer with him, Eric, and Leo. They were all good guys, seemed to like me, and were loyal to Premium. Lots of stuff happening in our lives, and they all appeared to be good things. I decided to hire a contractor to remodel the kitchen. It was a guy I knew who bought from us. I could do it, but it would take months with me doing it, and I didn't want to tear that essential part of the house up for a long time. Diana was involved with the design process, and though we didn't agree on everything, her contributions were helpful. Towards the end of October, I had to go back on the road. Diana was unhappy about it and started to pressure me about a 2 or 3 day trip rather than 5 days. There was no way I could do it in less than 5. My November trip coincided with the week Junior was going to be in town for mill tours. I would miss it, but Henry said he would be glad to show Junior our operation. I had a trade show with a customer in Montana, and it was going to give me a good opportunity to showcase our products to this market. The show had set up on Friday morning, then started Friday evening, and then all day Friday. I had a flight out early from Billings Sunday morning. On Friday, the show was busy. There was a cocktail party at 8 p.m., and I had a number of promising conversations. Every night when I traveled, I always called Diana in the evening to check in. This Friday, I made it up to my room a little before 10 and called. No answer. Maybe she went to bed or was in the shower. I called again at 10:30. No answer again. I figured she was asleep. The show started Friday at 10. I slept till 7, got up, worked out at the crappy little hotel gym, and called Diana about 8:45. Still no answer. After a quick shower, I saw I had missed a call from her. I called her back. Hey, we keep missing each other. How are you? Fine, she said and seemed a little out of it. Not the enthusiasm I expected. Called you a couple of times. Did you go to bed early? No, I had the phone on mute. I was just puttering around working in the kitchen, she replied. Did they get the tile finished? And then we were talking about the kitchen remodel, completely dismissing the fact that she did not answer the phone the night before. Monday was the week of Thanksgiving, and we would be celebrating with the Pearsons. Diana was a little off all week, quiet, a bit withdrawn. Maybe the holidays stressed her out. I didn't say anything about her mood. I got an invitation from Longfellow's, our new customer in Salt Lake City, to attend their Henritmas party November 20th. It was a Friday night. We talked about Diana coming with me, but I had other business and she had to work, so I went alone. They had decorated their warehouse area for the holidays. I knew there would be drinking, so I Ubered from my hotel. It was fun, and later in the evening, I was talking to Junior about our trip to Hawaii. I was showing him some pictures and he saw one of Diana. "Let me see that again. This is your fiancée?" I said, "Yes, she is," I said proudly. He handed me back the phone, then grabbed it again and stared at it closely. He had a serious look on his face. "What's up?" I asked. "Does she know someone named Kate?" he asked. I looked at him and said, "Why?" I could be wrong, but I thought I saw her and some chick named Kate at a dance club last month when I was out in your town. I got to tell you, as a friend, they were not acting like they were engaged. This was when I had been in Montana. I was starting to get pissed and embarrassed. I asked him to tell me what he knew. Friday night, after touring the mill, I went with another guy to some dance club called Pulse. It was what you might expect: loud, dark, etc. At one point, Sean, the guy I was with, was dancing with this Kate. He said he could have taken her back to the hotel if he wanted. But then later, her and your woman were with these other guys. I don't remember all their names. They looked like trouble. "Do you remember someone named Ethan?" I asked. "Yeah, that was one of them. He was friendly with your lady," Junior said. "Look man, you're a friend. I like you, Ryan. As much as it hurts, I want someone to tell me if this happened to me." "I know," I said. "I appreciate it. I should probably go. Thanks for the party and the info." I got a big hug from Junior and I left. I was steaming, but I had to think about this. Number one, she told me no more dance clubs. This made me mad. And number two, what was with the relationship with Ethan? She was lying to me. I just didn't know how much. I didn't sleep much that night, and my flight home was delayed. Diana had texted me a couple times, but I had yet to reply. Finally, as I was boarding, she called, and I answered. "When will you be home? My flight is late, and I won't be home till 6 tonight. "Oh, too bad. I love you, and I miss you," she said. I said, "They'll see you tonight," and I hung up. After finally landing and on the way home, I decided my plan was to see if she would lie to me. I gave her a hug and a kiss when I got home. I inspected the progress of the kitchen. "I got a question for you," I said. "Sure. Honey, what is it?" "When I was stuck in Montana at the show last month, what did you do that Friday night?" She looked away and said, "Nothing, just hung out here." You have one last chance to think through that answer. Where were you? I calmly but coldly asked her. I was then. She burst into tears and ran to the bedroom. I sat and waited. I was angry and sad. I just waited. 2 hours later, she came out and told me this tale. She had talked to Kate the day before, and Kate said they had to see this new club called Pulse. Kate knew I was out of town and said that all they were going to do was check it out. They ended up staying there late and dancing. "And then what?" I asked. "Then I came home alone," she said. "Of course alone. Was Kate with you?" "No, she hooked up with an old boyfriend, I think." "So, you came home by yourself?" "Yes," she said. "Who was at the club? Anyone I would know?" "Not really. I don't know." You can imagine how the rest of the conversation went. It was like pulling teeth to get hard information out of her. What I finally found out was they went to the club, ran into some friends, and danced. A bit later, Ethan and his crowd showed up, and they hung out with them for a while. She claimed she left about midnight. "Have you ever had sex with Ethan?" I asked. "Absolutely not," she answered. "Does he want to have sex with you?" I asked. "No, well, maybe, probably, but he's just a friend." "You are the only one I want to be with," she wailed. I told her I needed to think about this and she should stay in the cottage. Sobbing, she grabbed her things and headed to the cottage. The timing could not be worse. We were in the midst of wedding planning. The holidays were around the corner, and my entire future was up in the air. I needed some advice and called Luke. He suggested I come over on Friday night. Meanwhile, this week with Diana had been very uncomfortable. She was either crying or apologizing. I was upset. I loved her, but at this point I did not trust her. Can there be love without trust? I met Luke and Chloe at their sleek new home in the South Hills. I gave them the whole story, and I asked them what they thought. Luke was of the opinion that if you cannot trust someone, you shouldn't marry them. Hard to argue with that. Chloe said this: "I feel a little responsible for introducing you to, and I don't know Diana all that well, but I do think she is a nice person, not a bad one. And I also know she is deeply in love with you." I agreed with Chloe on this one. Ultimately, you either have to believe in them or not. That is something only you can decide, she said. That night, I went home and asked Diana to come up to the house. We made small talk for a few minutes. I could tell she was nervous. I had a couple questions for her, and I told her she needed to be absolutely honest. She agreed. I asked if she felt like the whole club scene was important to her. I asked exactly what happened the night she and Kate went to Pulse, and I asked her about the true nature of her relationship with Ethan. She told me that no, the clubs were not important, that Kate got her at a weak moment. She was bored and lonely and just wanted to have fun. Yes, Ethan was hitting on her, but she was not interested in him like that. Yes, the attention from those guys made her feel good, but she had never done anything other than being groped a few times on the dance floor. I thought about that, and what she said sounded sincere and consistent with my impressions of her. I told her this was a good first step. She asked if she could stay in our bed tonight, and I agreed. I had no intention of having sex with her, but I was unsuccessful with that intention. Through the holidays, the wedding, and life went on. My radar was up a little and I watched closely. Nothing made me think anything was wrong. Diana was loving and affectionate. For my January trip, she took the week off from work, went with me, and we spent the weekend in snowy Boulder. We had a great time. The whole Pulse incident was fading from memory. We were married in April, and it was a wonderful event. I met her mom and several members of her family. There were less than 100 people total family, the Pearsons, and some close friends. None of her pals from the dance club except Kate. We honeymooned on St. Martin in the Caribbean. It was different from Hawaii. The ocean was warmer, fewer waves, and a beautiful blue color. You could tell there was a heavy European influence, especially at the clothing-optional beaches. Diana went topless and kept the minimum covered below the waist. We had every kind of sex at least daily for the entire honeymoon. Without question, my best vacation ever. For the next 3 years, things went along very well. I sometimes would think back to that December and the fact that I almost canceled the wedding and marriage. I was glad I hadn't. I blocked out any seeds of doubt and thought positive thoughts. We kept working on the house, and it was becoming a real neighborhood showpiece. I was proud. Business continued to be good, and we even considered opening up other markets, except currently with people and our operation we were at capacity. I began a good friendship with Lucas Tran. He was a great employee and a good guy. He knew our operations and our machinery. He was the last one to leave the shop at night. Once every few weeks, John, Leo, Eric, and I would sit in the shop after hours with the smell of cedar and sawdust and drink a six-pack. Our talk was casual about the business and life. I enjoyed their company, and I think they liked me. Just as things seemed fairly stable, a new competitor out of Asia started importing to the U.S. We first heard about them in Southern California, but we knew we would see them in our market soon. It was an engineered product that looked close to some of our products but was at least 30% less expensive. We started seeing sales slipping. We had been on the steady increase and had invested in resources to meet the demand, and now, for the first time ever for me, sales were going the other way. Henry, Emily, and I met to discuss our strategy with the new competition. Henry felt like the best thing to do was get in front of our customers and review the differences in quality of our products. This will mean more travel, and I'm afraid I'm going to need you, Ryan, to cover our NorCal market as well as the mountain market. I knew Henry was right, and I knew I needed to do this, but I was stressed out. That night when I got home, I talked to Diana about business and what I was going to need to do. How long is this going to take? She asked. I told her I didn't know. It will certainly be months. Months? She exploded. You're telling me you will be gone 2 weeks per month for months? I told her yes, and I could not make any promises. She fumed. Now not only was I stressed out about work, I was getting no support from Diana. We had some good moments, but over the next 6 months, our relationship suffered. The closeness we had was rarely there. I felt like I was fighting a battle in the marketplace as well as fighting a battle at home. After 6 months of my traveling and her not understanding, our marriage was at an all-time low. I had to travel for the business. The travel was helping and business was steady, but it took a consistent effort. She didn't understand. I left on Monday to head to the Bay Area. The weekend had been rough, no closeness, no good conversations, and no sex. I started to feel guilty about the travel and called her on Tuesday and said we needed a night out when I got back. She seemed a little more energetic about things, and I thought maybe our relationship would start getting better. Friday night, we Ubered to Vino's Eatery in City Center. Diana was affectionate, the conversation was good, and she even asked me about business. We had a great dinner and a nice bottle of wine and a couple of after-dinner drinks. I thought sex tonight would be great. I called Uber, and we waited outside the restaurant for our ride. I went inside to use the restroom, and when I came back outside, there were Ethan, Henry, and that crowd hovering around Diana. She was smiling and laughing, and Ethan had his arm around her waist. I walked over, grabbed his wrist to remove his hand. He flinched, kind of clipped my jaw, and I shoved him. The next thing I knew, I was on the ground. One of them had cold-cocked me, and I blacked out for a second. When I came to, Diana was helping Ethan up. Then she apologized to them. I was groggy, but I knew what I saw. Then she walked over to me and started yelling, blaming me for the incident. They took off when someone from the restaurant came out to check on things. I was still on my hands and knees with my eyes swelling shut. Just then, Uber showed up. We both got in. I was still dazed. She just lit into me. Why did I have to ruin things? Why did I knock Ethan down? What was I thinking grabbing his hand? It's my body. What were you doing attacking my friends? I didn't say a word. I did not trust myself. I was so angry at her and the situation. Stressed out at work. Stressed out about my marriage. And she is showing far more loyalty to Ethan than her husband. The moment we got into the house, she went to the kitchen to get me an ice pack. She had no idea how mad I was. Get your bum away from me, I roared. It shocked her. She just stood and looked at me. Get your bum out of here. You can stay in the cottage. What is your problem tonight? She lashed back. Tonight? I thundered. My problem is you every night. No support, no affection, just whining because I'm trying to earn a living for us. She walked to the bedroom, grabbed her stuff, and headed out the back way towards the cottage without a word. I definitely needed the space, and I was relieved when she left. I sat at the table and had a brandy. On my second one, I had calmed way down and took an account of my life. I loved my job, and even with the challenges, it was a career I loved. My relationship with the Pearsons Daniel was a mentor and a friend. Emily and I had always been friends despite the failed marriage, and Luke was my best friend. I loved my house. I was steadily transitioning it into my idea of a perfect home. Perhaps because, growing up, housing was never quite sure for my family. Having my own place was extra important. I started feeling better and decided tomorrow Diana and I would talk and maybe even think about counseling. I gave her a little time. At 9 a.m., I walked out to the cottage with a tray of coffee, juice, and fruit. I opened the door and no one was there. Her stuff wasn't here, and she clearly had not spent the night here. Okay, now what? I puttered around the backyard for an hour or so and called her straight to voicemail. Mid-afternoon, I called again voicemail. I worked around the house, tried a few more times, then I called Emily. She invited me over for dinner, and she, Nina, and I discussed my situation. Emily said we had both made mistakes, but Nina was firmly in my corner. We discussed all options, including divorce. I was in town this week, and after a half-dozen more calls and no reply, by Tuesday, the ball was in her court. Friday midday, she called. She was staying with friends and wanted to come by and get some of her stuff. She came by at 6 that evening. I wanted to talk, and she said not yet. I asked where she was staying, and she said with friends. I asked who, and she said just some friends. I told her I was gone next week through the weekend at another trade show, and that I would like to talk with her when I got back. She nodded okay. She took off in some vehicle I did not recognize with dark-tinted windows. I couldn't tell who was driving. I decided to fly out Sunday night for Salt Lake City. That way I could hit the ground running on Monday morning. My sales pitch to my customers was quality, service, and the relationship we had established. This compared to cheaper prices as the only value my Asian competitor had. We actually were keeping a good % of our business, particularly when material defects started appearing from the Asian stuff. I had dinner Tuesday night with Ethan Langley. He and I were close enough that I told him the whole story about my situation. He said, we don't really need you at the show this weekend. We were co-sponsoring a booth with Longfellows at the trade show. The show will be slow, and if anything, I probably have too many people scheduled there anyway. I think you need to get back and take care of business at home. My first reaction was to protest, but I decided to take him up on it. I got an early flight for Friday morning that got me home before 9 a.m. The rest of my week in Colorado went well. I was feeling optimistic about things, though I knew Diana and I had a lot to work on. I drove straight home from the airport, and as I unlocked the door, I immediately could tell something was wrong. The house was trashed. Had I been burglarized? The closer I looked, it looked like a party had happened. Empty alcohol bottles were all over the place, trash, unwashed dishes. There was a burn mark on my refinished hardwood and a huge dark stain on my couch. I checked everything out. There was no one in the house, but it looked like the guest room bed had been used. Diana? Would she do this? I thought she loved the house like I did. I wandered outside, and the backyard looked fine, but I did see a few cigarette butts on the ground. I went to the cottage and opened the door to see Diana and Ethan asleep in the bed. What the hell is going on? She jumped up. You weren't supposed to be home until tomorrow, she said. She was nude, and for whatever reason was covering herself up in front of me. Meanwhile, Ethan casually rolled over and stared at me with a smirk on his face. Get the hell out of here. Aholy, I bellowed at him. Chill, man. He'll be leaving, but you understand the lady here owns half this house. You've got 2 minutes to get the hell out of here, I shouted. We are married, and it's my house too, she chimed in. I was seething mad, and I knew if I didn't leave these two, something very bad would happen. 2 minutes, I said, and left. Back in the main house, I called Luke and explained what had happened. He was calm and said he would make some calls to divorce attorneys for me and set something up. Divorce at this point seemed like the only option. I called Emily at work and gave her a quick version, and she said that she and Nina would come over tonight. I ordered new door locks from the hardware store. I was so wound up and started cleaning the mess of my house. Luke called back and said he had a meeting set up Monday at 11 a.m. with a divorce attorney he was referred to. His name was George Hunt. I checked out his profile, ex-military, JAG, originally from Arizona. I found his picture, dark hair, a strong jawline, and a very no-nonsense appearance. Good. I checked the cottage and they were gone. It was a mess too. There also appeared to be evidence of drug use. I got the locks and installed them. By then, it was dinner time and Emily and Nina showed up. They got the whole story, and even Emily agreed there was no way to save this relationship. I was more angry than sad at this point. I met with George Hunt, and he was just as he appeared, firm handshake, looked me straight in the eye. He explained that even though she committed adultery, that would not be a factor in the divorce settlement. He asked about my assets, and I told him about the house, my bank and retirement accounts, and my 9 ownership of Pinecrest Timber. He said it would be likely things would be split 50-50 and to prepare for that outcome. He said he would put the papers together, and I could have her served by the end of the week. After I left, I was in shock. My marriage was over. She would get half of the value of the house and half of my equity in Pinecrest Timber. The solidness of my entire life was being threatened. I was starting to get depressed. I called Luke to explain what was happening. After explaining what George Hunt told me about 50-50, Luke said, "Rick, worry about that for now. Just take care of yourself. I may be able to help." I felt a little better after talking to Luke. But what could he do? The law was the law. I went into work mostly because I didn't want to be by myself and tried to lose myself in the familiarity of helping run the business. It seemed like both Henry and Emily had talked to Luke. They were both encouraging about what the outcome might be. I wasn't nearly as optimistic. Even John, Eric, and the warehouse guys were supportive. John walked up to me and said, "Boss, we got your back. Rick, worry." I truly appreciated their friendship. I had divorce papers served to her at her work on Friday. I immediately got a text from her saying, "Aholy, you had to send them to my work? I want half of everything." I called Luke, who had me call Darren, who told me to cease any communication with her. If she hires a lawyer, I was to contact Darren, and then it would all be done between the lawyers. I couldn't help but worry about my house and my shares at Pinecrest Timber. I was upset and called Luke about it. He said, "I know you're worried, but I am working on a few things for you. Have I ever let you down before?" He hadn't, but I asked him, "What exactly are you working on?" "Can't say yet. Have faith." The weeks went on, and my life settled into work pretty exclusively. I didn't even want to work on the house, she might get it. I functioned with a dark cloud. Not only were my assets being attacked, but my wife was gone. I spent this time wondering what happened. I knew I was gone a lot, but I thought she understood this was for our future. I had learned in life you make short-term sacrifices for long-term gain. I knew she was a bit of a flirt and liked to get attention from men. That whole dance club scene showed that. I was sad, nervous, and angry all rolled into one. If there was any good news, it was that business had rebounded, and we started making some plans to go after the Southern California and potentially Arizona markets. We had inquiries about our products from these areas. One night, As I was getting home, I saw what I thought was the same dark-tinted window car that Diana had been in idling at the curb by my house, and then pull away as I drove up. They certainly knew where I lived. The following Tuesday, I got a call from George Hunt saying that he had correspondence from Diana's attorney. They were asking for half of my share of equity in Pinecrest Timber, 50 of my bank account and investments, and the house. I exploded. No way. He told me to calm down. They can ask for anything they want. He was working with Luke on something that had to do with my finances, and we might have a surprise for them. 2 more weeks went by, and one night, John, Eric, Leo, and I all went out for beers in City Center. As we were sitting inside the bar, a couple of guys from Vincent's crowd walked by and gave me the eye, then quickly hurried off. I looked over and John was just staring at them. "Those the Aholis, boss?" John asked. "Yes," I told them. The 3 of them started talking in Vietnamese. "What?" I asked. "No worries, boss. We got your back." The next day, Darren called me and said we had a preliminary and potential settlement conference next Friday at his office. "What do I need to do? How can I help?" I asked. "Just be here at 3 p.m., he told me. I called Luke and told him what was going on. "Yeah, I know. We'll be there too." "We?" I said. "Who is we?" "Like I told you, have faith. This may work out okay for all of us," and then he hung up. I was mystified but slightly encouraged. I was there early on Friday, and Darren's secretary took me to a back office. After a few minutes, I was ushered into the conference room. On our side of the table were Darren, Luke, a man I did not know, and me. On the other side were Diana's attorney, Rick Blassingame, Diana still looking good, and I could not believe it, but Vincent was there sitting and smirking. There were no handshakes and no small talk. Darren started, "All right, Mr. Turner, it's your meeting. Go ahead." "If I may," he started. "Mrs. Joseph is just after what is rightfully due her after your client threw her out of their marital home." "Go on," Darren said while staring directly at him. "Here is a fair and accurate accounting of the marital assets," and he handed us all a paper. It read like this: a 9 of Pinecrest Timber LLC, 1/2 valued at $400,000 B, 50 of the residence on Ravenscrest Drive, 1/2 valued at $350,000 C, 50 of Mr. Joseph's retirement account, valued at $70,000 D, 50 of their joint checking and saving account, valued at $130,000 E, miscellaneous pieces of furniture and other household items. At this point, the man I did not know opened his briefcase and brought out some documents. "Mr. Turner, allow me to introduce myself to you and your client. My name is Michael Green. I'm an attorney, and I have a doctorate in corporate law. I have several documents that you may find interesting," as he handed both Diana and Blassingame some legal-looking papers. "Number 1. Mr. Joseph does not own the house on Ravenscrest. It is an asset owned by Pinecrest Timber LLC. "But," sputtered Blassingame, "he is an owner of the company." "And no, he's not," interrupted Ethan. "By their corporate bylaws, a majority can nominate for ownership, and in unusual cases where it may harm the company, the majority can rescind shares. If you turn to the 3rd page of the annual meeting, the majority owners rescinded Mr. Joseph's shares before the divorce decree was served." At this point, Vincent yelled, "This is half of what is yours." Diana was crying, and Blassingame was way over his head. "Whoever you are," directed a steely-eyed George Hunt, "anything more out of you and you will be removed. In fact, I will do it myself." At that point, Vincent bolted from the room, slamming the door. Diana continued to cry, and other than that, there was silence in the room. "Mr. Turner," Darren continued, "Mr. Devier has examined all the records and has had them certified and endorsed through the Attorney General's office of the state. You are welcome to try to take this to a higher court, but a piece of advice: it will be expensive for your client. And I may add, Mr. Devier has been a counseling attorney on matters of far more sophisticated corporate law than this. He also, as a favor to his fraternity brother Luke Pearson, is consulting pro bono on Mr. Joseph's behalf." I was in just as much shock as Diana and Blassingame. Darren opened a file folder and pulled out a check. "Hey, race, a cashier's check for $25,000. That, Mr. Turner, is our final offer. Would you like a few moments to consult with your client?" "Yes, I would," said Blassingame. We left and went to Darren's office. I was hugging Luke, hugging Darren, and when I went to hug Michael Green, he held out a hand and said, "A handshake will do." I laughed and shook his hand. "Thank you, all of you. But do I not own my house?" Luke smiled and said, "Rick, worry. The house is yours. When my old man did that contract with Terry Peterson to buy the house, Peterson wouldn't sell it to you because he was worried you may not keep up with the payments. So, the old man was making the payments and you paying him. I got to thinking about that and Ethan took a peek at the deal. Today, that house belongs to Pinecrest Timber. Once this is all settled, we'll get it legally in your name. But what about my shares of the company? I asked. Do I still own 9? No, as a matter of fact, you don't. Again, once this is all settled and done, you will own 14. I have bequeathed you 5 of my ownership. In all honesty, Ryan, you deserve it. The company is doing well, and you are a big part of that. At that moment, Darren's secretary came in and told us that Blasingame was ready to talk to us. Back to the conference room, and we all took our spots. Darren began, "All right, Mr. Turner, what have you and your client decided?" "Well, Mr. King, it is not that simple. Though he does not own the house, Mrs. Joseph spent many hours repairing and working on the house. Furthermore, while Mr. Joseph was on his many travels, it was Mrs. Joseph that minded the house." Darren, Blasingame went on, "We believe 50,000 is far more in line with what Mrs. Joseph at a minimum deserves." At that, Darren shut the file folder, stuffed it back in his briefcase, stood up and said, "See you in court." And at that, Luke and Michael Green also stood. Wait. "Well, take the 25,000, sputtered Blasingame. Darren pulled out the divorce decree, and both Diana and I signed the agreement. I was free with very little cost. As Diana and Blasingame filed out, Luke said loud enough for all to hear, 25,000? Nice job. We would have gone up to 75,000. All I heard was a single SOB from Diana, and that was it. That was a little rough, Luke, Ethan said. Not rough enough, my friend, Luke replied. We celebrated at a bar, and I happily bought. I was so thankful for the legal advice and especially thankful that Luke Pearson was my friend. Friday was a long day at work, but a good day. Business was good. I felt so good about all the support I got from Henry, Emily, Luke, John, and the guys in the warehouse. I just felt good to be part of a good group of people. I was still mad at Diana, but more than anything, I was turning sad about the relationship. If just a couple of things had gone a different way, I believe we could have been happy. But I also thought, should a strong relationship be that fragile? Hard to say. Little did I know, but as I was leaving work, a dark car with tinted windows began to follow me. I was oblivious, just glad to be heading back to my house. I went immediately to the back deck for my after-work beer. I sat there, closed my eyes, and just exhaled. That was when I first heard them. There were 3 of them, and Ethan had a knife. Well, look what we have here. What do you want, Ethan? I said. I was scared. What I want is a piece of you, a few fingers, maybe a hand, or maybe something else. I looked around for an escape route, and just then, the other 2 guys grabbed me. This is going to be fun, he chuckled. At that moment, I heard a commotion from back by the cottage. Within seconds, John, Eric, Leo, and 3 of their friends all appeared in my yard. You need any help, boss? As a matter of fact, John, the first 2, can you help show these guys the way out? Ethan started backing away, and his guys took off. John's guys grabbed them, and John grabbed Ethan. We're going to have a discussion, mister, he said to Ethan as he escorted them out of the yard. About an hour later, John came back by himself. I thanked him and asked how he knew they were here. I look out warehouse door and see black car follow you. I see those guys before bad guys. Well, thank you. How can I repay you? I asked. I was grateful. Repay? Repay what? You know, repay. We friends. I was moved to near tears. And boss, my guarantee those guys don't come back. I didn't want to know. Flash forward 5 years. Business has its ups and downs, but for us, mostly up. I had a new guy working, and though he did not know the lumber business, he was smart, hardworking, and a good learner. I have him working in ops with John and the guys. His name is Chase Devier. Yep, a cousin of Ethan that helped me so much all those years ago. Seems Chase was not interested in college and needed a job. At first, I thought I was repaying a favor, but he is working well for us. Henry still comes in every day, but I think he mostly reads the newspaper and talks to old friends. Emily is really running the place, and I help. I spend a lot of time on the road, but now that we are established, not nearly as much. My love life has improved too. Through my friendship with John and Eric, I met Leo's sister, Julie. Yes, that's her name. I asked her why she was named that, and she told me when my mom had me and I came out, she said, that's Julie. So cute. And she is cute. She is a fitness instructor at the Valley Club, and she is in very good shape. I'm almost 10 years older than her, but she doesn't seem to mind. She also doesn't seem to mind that I am not eager to get married again. She says to me, you look at other women and I kick her bum and then I kick yours. I just smile and laugh. Did I ever run into Diana again and see her looking bad or anything? No, never saw her again, and to be honest, I don't even think of her much. I did see Ethan one time walking towards me on the street. He saw me and crossed to the other side. I am forever grateful for the people in my life: Henry, Emily, Nina, Lucas Tran, Eric, Leo, and of course Julie. But most of all, Luke. I love my home, and I love my company. I'm a very lucky man. And that's where the story ends? Or does it? What would you have done differently if you were in Ryan's shoes? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that make you think twice about love, life, and loyalty. See you in the next video.